Okay. Good evening,
We are live.
everyone. Are we live? Okay, are we good? Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to today's session on DevOps on AWS by AWS Club IGDTUW. In the world of cloud computing and DevOps, it's not every day that you get to learn from a seasoned expert who has not only witnessed the evolution of technology but has also been instrumental in shaping its future. Today, we are privileged to introduce our expert speaker, Amrita Shetty, a seasoned expert, a seasoned solution architect at Amazon Web Services. With over 12 years of experience in software development and a master's in computer applications, Amrita is here to guide you on your cloud journey. I heartily welcome you to this session. I would like to mention that all the participants will be receiving their certificates from AWS Club IGDTUW, and we will be having a Q&A session at the end. Now I would like to hand it over to you, Amrita.
Thank you, Tanisha. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I appreciate you all spending your Sunday evening with me. And I'm excited to talk about DevOps on AWS today. So, before we start, a little bit about me. So, my name is Amrita Shetty. I am a solutions architect at AWS. And as a solutions architect, I help customers with their cloud journey and by helping them with their cloud architecture. So, I have been with AWS for 2.5 years. And before joining AWS, I have been in various software development roles. And about my hobby, I love travel. Travel is my hobby, my passion. And I also love anything to do with outdoors. I love hiking, biking, paddleboarding. So, so I was looking for a picture to add to this slide, and what better picture than in front of Taj Mahal, right? Okay, so that's a little bit about me. So let's jump into the agenda for today. So we will look at what is DevOps and what are the benefits of DevOps. And we will also look at why AWS for DevOps and look at the AWS DevOps services. And we'll end with a demo. So before we talk about DevOps, let me give you a little history. So before agile methodology started, which is in early 2000s, like waterfall methodology was the way was developed and delivered. And waterfall is a linear approach where you get all the requirements for the software in the beginning, and then you do the design, then developers go build in isolation, and then software the software they build is given to the operations team to deploy. And after deploy, QA does the testing, which is the quality assurance testing. And after QA test, it is released to production, and the operations team handles the day-to-day operations of the software. So it used to take months to get new features out, and there was like little communication between dev teams and operations teams. So this was not working, and not getting features out sooner was costing businesses. So in early 2000s, agile methodology of software development started gaining popularity. And agile methodology centers around incremental and iterative steps to completing projects. The incremental parts of a project are carried out in short-term development cycles called sprints. So this approach prioritizes quick delivery, adapting to change, and collaboration rather than following a set plan. And DevOps can be thought of as an evolution of agile practices or as a missing piece of agile. So it's an effort to take the innovations of the agile approach and apply them to the operations processes. So what is DevOps? DevOps is a combination of culture, engineering practices, and tools that help increase an organization's ability to deliver applications and services at high speed and at scale with better quality. In DevOps, culture involves the mindset of the leadership, what is the strategy, mission, and vision of the top management. And in the organization, is there a learning culture in place? Does everyone understand what it means to develop modern applications? DevOps culture emphasizes on breaking down silos between development teams and operations teams. It's about fostering a mindset of collaboration and communication. And DevOps practices are mainly processes and methodologies in the organization to improve the software development and delivery. For example, do you practice loosely coupled architectures? Do you do small but frequent deployments to reduce your risk of application defects? Do you enforce good coding standards? Does the organization follow microservices patterns? So on and so forth. And now for tools, having the right culture and practices is still not good enough without the tools to ensure that the teams are productive. We can do smaller, frequent deployments, but doing it manually is not scalable. And you need tools to automate the process. For example, continuous integration tools, continuous delivery tools, infrastructure as code tools, version control tools, etc. And continuous integration and continuous delivery are a huge part of DevOps. So the release life cycle, these are like different components of software release cycles. The continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, and we will go in depth into each of these. So what is continuous integration? Continuous integration, or CI in CI/CD, is a practice where developers integrate their code early and often into a central code repository, and after that, automated build and tests are run to verify the changes. The goal of continuous integration is to find and address bugs quicker, improve software quality, and reduce the time it takes to validate and release new software updates. So, over the past 10 to 15 years, continuous integration has gained popularity in the software community. In the past, developers were working in isolation for an extended period of time and only attempting to merge their changes into the main branch once their feature was completed. And batching up changes to merge back into the main branch made merging the code really difficult because of all the merge conflicts and integration issues. Continuous integration practices have made teams more productive and allowed them to develop new features faster. And continuous integration requires teams to write automated tests, which improves the quality of the code being released and reduces the time it takes to validate that the new version of the software is good. So, what is continuous delivery? So, continuous delivery is a software development practice where code changes are automatically built, tested, and prepared for a release to production. So, it expands upon the continuous integration by deploying all code changes to a testing environment and or a production environment after the build stage. So when continuous delivery is implemented properly, developers will always have a deployment ready build artifact that has passed through standardized test process. So what is continuous deployment? Continuous deployment is about automatically deploying changes as they are checked in through all of the building, testing cycle, all the way through to deploying it to production. So, what is the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment? So, both continuous deployment and continuous delivery have very similar responsibilities. So, delivery is the precursor to deployment. In continuous delivery, there is a final manual approval step before pushing the code to production. And in continuous deployment, there is no manual approval step. So one misconception about continuous delivery is that it means every change committed is applied to production immediately after passing automated tests. But the point of continuous delivery is not to apply every change to production immediately, but to ensure that every change is ready to go to production. So that's a little bit about continuous integration and continuous delivery. So, what are some of the key reasons organizations are adopting DevOps? To accelerate delivery of new high quality services? The faster organizations can ship, the faster they can get feedback. And not all software they ship will last a long time, and the organizations can understand that quickly with CI/CD. And to reduce the impact of changes. So if a software causes an outage, we can simply roll back the changes to an older version easily without a major impact to the business and, more importantly, to our personal lives. And to gain insight, whether it is catching unhandled exceptions or monitoring performance metrics, observability has a real impact on the bottom line of the business. And at AWS, we are making that simpler. And lastly, and most importantly, protecting customers, excuse me, and the business. Excuse me, sorry. So, software is at the heart of what organizations do, whether they create software or rely on software for the business. The principles of CI/CD protects these two key assets. So, why does DevOps matter? DevOps increases organizational agility and decreases failure rate. And anytime you have a development and operations working on a piece of software, embracing DevOps will make your organization more functional. And according to DORA State of DevOps report, teams who adopted DevOps saw their deployment frequencies go from weekly to monthly to hourly to daily. And change lead time, so which is the time, like the time from the code committed to the repository to having that code successfully deployed in production, went from 1 to 6 months to 1 to 7 days. And failure rate of a change went down from 46 to 60% to 0 to 15%. Okay, now let's look at why AWS tools for DevOps. AWS tools are a end-to-end solution that is designed to work together, from CI/CD to observability to infrastructure as code to security. You can build a mature DevOps practice using exclusively or predominantly AWS tools and with native integrations. And where we do have gaps, we have native integrations with the top vendors in the space to make it as easy as possible for you. And we take security very seriously at AWS. We say that security is job zero for us. And when we build solutions for our customers, we include security measures and opinionated security practices by default. And you don't need expertise to get started. And our tools are built for the developers and the organization. And our tools have deep integrations with most third-party tools like GitHub, Bitbucket, etc. And our tools are competitively priced. And AWS has 6 families of developer tools. We have tools for CI/CD, we have tools for infrastructure as code, We have software development kits or SDKs for various programming languages. And we have command line interfaces. We have integrated development environments or IDEs. And we also have toolkits for the popular IDEs. And we have application modernization tools. We have next gen, excuse me, DevOps tools. And organizations and development teams can find the right tool for the job. AWS developer tooling ecosystem is expansive, and that is by design. We know developers don't like to be locked into an ecosystem, so we have designed our developer tools offering to match what our customers or developers want. Let's start with a quick look at AWS developer tools portfolio. We have CI/CD services that we're going to look in detail today. And we have tools for infrastructure as code, cloud formation, and cloud development kit. And we have AWS owned integrated development environment, Cloud9, and we have toolkits and SDKs to make developers' lives easy. And we have monitoring and observability services to get a system-wide picture across all the small components. Last but not least, variety of services to develop modern mobile and web applications. Today, we are going to focus on the top left section, our CI/CD offering. So this is typical software release process stages. You author the code or save or push your changes to a source control system, and then build stage starts, and then the test start. Then you do the testing, and then you deploy the code to production, and from there monitoring the software in production. So at each stage, there are some practices in place. And the best practice here is to automate everything and leave no room for human intervention, because doing things manually is error prone. So in AWS, we provide several tools that can help automate most of these practices. As you can see here, these are the AWS code services that can be used for automation. We have AWS Cloud9 and IDE toolkits for authoring. We have Code Commit for source control. We have Code Artifact for artifact repository. And we have Code Build for building and testing code. And we have Code Deploy for deploying the code. And you can use Code Pipeline to orchestrate the build, test, and deploy phases. And we have different tools for different stages of the software release, and they are purpose built and are fully customizable, just like Lego blocks. So you can use each of these services individually, or you can use the whole suite to build your pipeline. So let's look at each of these services. So AWS Cloud9 is a cloud-based integrated development environment, or IDE, that allows you to write, run, and debug your code with just a browser. And it includes a code editor, it includes a debugger, and a terminal. And you can launch the IDE from any machine, any laptop, or any desktop, as long as you have a web browser and internet connectivity. And you can very easily and quickly start new projects. And when I'm going to demo, I'm going to show this to you. And we have support for local development, and developers can use AWS toolkits for the most popular IDEs. And toolkits are plugins and extensions that can enable access to AWS services from your IDE. We have toolkits for VS Code, IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, etc. So let's look at AWS Code Commit. So AWS Code Commit is a fully managed source control repository in the cloud that makes it easy for organizations to host secure, highly scalable private Git repositories. Code Commit eliminates the need to set up, manage, and scale your own source control system. And there is no hardware to manage or software to patch, and you don't have to worry about running out of space. And Code Commit is built on a highly redundant and durable architecture, keeping the repository highly available and accessible as your projects grow and the number and size of your repositories increases. And you can keep on using your Git clients and Git supported IDEs. And we have AWS Code Build for building your project. And Code Build is a fully managed build service that compiles source code, runs tests, and produces software packages that are ready to deploy. And you don't need to provision, manage, and scale your own build servers. And you can use Code Build to build code from repositories in GitHub, Bitbucket, AWS Code Commit, or Amazon S3. And AWS Code Build is designed to enable organizations to build a highly available build process with almost unlimited scale. AWS Code Deploys are deployment tool. So it's a fully managed deployment service that automates software deployments to a variety of compute services such as Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud or Amazon EC2, AWS Fargate, AWS Lambda, and it can even deploy to on-prem servers if customers are using some on-prem servers. And AWS Code Deploy makes it easier for you to rapidly release new features, helps you avoid downtime during application deployment, and handles the complexity of updating your applications. And you can use Code Deploy to automate software deployments, eliminating the need for error-prone manual operations. And the service scales to match your deployment needs. AWS Code Artifact is a fully managed artifact repository service that can be used by organizations to securely store, publish, and share software packages used in their software development process. For example, if you use Java and if you're like developing a web application, you need to build a WAR file or a jar files. So you need a central place to store these artifacts. So that's where code Artifact comes in. And Code Artifact can be configured to automatically fetch software packages and dependencies from public artifact repositories. So developers can have access to the latest versions. For example, if you're using Java, the Maven Central or Node, NPM repo, etc. And Code Artifact works with commonly used package managers to build and build tools like Maven, Gradle, NPM, Yarn, Twine, and Pip. So it makes it easy to integrate into the existing development workflows. So we looked at Code Commit, Code Build, Code Deploy. So now if you want to automate the build and deploy process, every time there is a commit to the code repository, you can use AWS Code Pipeline to orchestrate it. So AWS Code Pipeline builds, tests, and deploys your application according to the defined workflow every time there is a code commit to your source control repository. And we have a new service called Amazon Code Whisperer. This is a generative AI based service. It is an AI coding companion that generates real time, single line, or full function code suggestions in your IDE to help you quickly build software. And with Code Whisperer, you can write a comment in a natural language that outlines a specific task, for example, in English, such as upload a file with server side encryption. And based on this information, Code Whisperer recommends one or more code snippets directly in your IDE that can accomplish that task. And you can easily accept that suggestion or continue writing your own code. And I'm going to demo this to you a little later. And because Code Whisperer can generate a lot of code for developers, it can accelerate application development and free up developers to focus on more business critical problems. And it's free for developers to use, so I would recommend you sign up for AWS build. You need a AWS builder ID and start using it in your favorite IDE. And AWS Code Services tightly integrate with most popular third-party tools, for example, GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, Terraform, etc. So we looked at our developer tools, and over the years, we continually evolved these services and added new ones. But we have always taken the approach where we wanted to offer our customers the most amount of flexibility, and we want to make it really easy for our customers to use our services as a part of their custom tool chain so they can mix and match the services that work best for them. And when you have that level of flexibility and customization, it's kind of comes with a trade off. And we have heard some feedback from customers over the years that flexibility brings challenges. So we needed to provide something that was more integrated and opinionated so that we could help customers solve these problems. And so last year at reInvent, which is our annual conference, we released a new service called Amazon Code Catalyst. And Amazon Code Catalyst is an integrated DevOps service that provides you with all the tools that you need to go from idea to production in one seamless experience. We put all these tools to plan, author, build, test, deploy, and also management and collaboration in one service. So obviously, the first problem we solved in this is there is no need to build a custom toolchain or do any integration work. Everything is wired up and working as one seamless DevOps toolchain that we manage. And one of the key features of Code Catalyst is blueprints. So if you're starting a new project, blueprints are starter code that you can use to start quickly. And Code Catalyst blueprints like give you a CI/CD workflow, a testing infrastructure, source code, etc. And it makes it really easy to get started very quickly, from getting to your first build to getting to your first deployment and getting your software out into the world. And of course, you can start with the empty project or existing projects, and you can still benefit from the tools that all work together. And Code Catalyst also includes the integrated issue tracking. It is done with the Kanban boards. And we also have the ability to invite your teammates into your space, and the space is sort of like a top level container in Code Catalyst for your projects. Okay. I covered some of our development tools. So I'm just going to show you how some of these work. So let's see. Give me a minute here. Okay, so this is my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show you how Code Whisperer works. So there is a setup which you can look in our docs. If you Google how to set up AWS Code Whisperer, it will take you here. I can put this link, or I can share this link later. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to create a new file here. I'm just going to do this in Python. Just test. Okay. So now let's say I want to write a function to validate an email address. So there, Code Whisperer suggested me I can hit just tab to accept that. So I'm going to hit a tab, and there's and I'm going to hit tab again. So here it gave me a regex pattern to validate the email. So now I'm going to give it a little more of a hint. So let's say I want to validate the email address using AWS simple email service. So now it's importing Boto3, which is our SDK for Python. And it's setting up the SES. And here I'm just hitting tab to accept the suggestion. So it's using the SES verify email identity to verify the email. So now let's say I want to calculate a SHA-52 of a file. So I'm just going to add that comment here and hit enter. It imported HashLab. So you can like verify if the code it's suggesting is right, and if it is right, you can use it. It may not be right sometimes, but yeah, always double check. Now let's say I want to write a function to upload a file to S3 bucket, which is AWS storage service. So there we go. So that's how you use Code Whisperer. So I would highly recommend try to use it, and it's free for developers. You just need to set up AWS Builder ID, which the instructions have. Oops. Yeah, these instructions will show you how to do that. Now let's see how to use Code Catalyst. So to use Code Catalyst, there is a free tier, so you can use it. So go to codecatalyst.aws, which will take you here, and you can sign up. I am already signed up, so I'm going to sign in. Hold on, I was already signed in, it looks like. So about so I'm going to sign in. So that brings me to my space in Code Catalyst. So this is my top level container where all my projects are. So I'm going to create a project. So you can start from a blueprint, or you can bring your own code, or you can start from scratch. So I'm going to start from a blueprint. This is what I talked about. So I am going to pick a modern three-tier web application. So, and if you can read through here, it talks about the architecture. And I'm going to name, let's see, take it up. And in your space, you can connect to a AWS account, which I have already done. And So this is where you deploy your code. So I have that account picked here. And when you connect to an account, you have to create a deployment role, which I already have. So I'm going to pick that. And for compute, I'm going to use AWS Lambda, which is our serverless function. And then for front-end hosting, I'm going to use CloudFront and S3, which is a common pattern for deploying front-end. So CloudFront is our CDN. And I'm going to deploy it to AWS region US West 2. And I'm going to leave the default application name, and I'm going to create the project. The blueprint. Left side, you have issues, code, CI/CD. So here I'm going to go into under code, I'm going to go to source repositories. So it created my source repository, Misfits. And if you click on it, so this is the starter code I was talking about. So there's the source, and then there is some files which needed for the front end and in back end, and then you have the web, which this is where all your front end code is. And oops, yeah, and you can click on your commits and it will show you what are the changes. So now let's go to CI/CD and go to workflows. This is where it creates the CI/CD pipeline. And it has two. One is on pull request and one is on application deployment pipeline. It is like every time you commit, it uses this deployment pipeline. So this is the workflow where every time there is a commit, it builds and then it deploys the back end. It does some tests and then deploy the front end. And now if you go to runs, since there was a first commit to the repository, so there is a build in progress right now. So I can click on it here. And here it's working on building right now. So it already built the backend. So you can click on each of these and it will show you the logs related when it was running. So for example, it installed, pip install all the requirements, libraries. And if you have any errors, you can take some time to build this. So while we wait, I'm going to show you how to open your code in IDE. So under code, there's dev environments. And here you can create a development environment. And these are the IDEs we support. So when I mentioned before the AWS Cloud9, which is our cloud-based IDE. So I'm going to use AWS Cloud9. And I'm going to clone the repository. And I'm going to use the existing branch here. So I'm going to say create. So it created the development environment for me. So it's opening Cloud9 now. Going to take a couple of minutes here to open Cloud9. Yeah. So this is Cloud9 ID. So I'm going to close this. Welcome. And this is the terminal down here. And it, what I showed in the repository, it checked out that code here. So here's a web source. So in web, let's see, there's the index HTML. So now I'm going to, let's make some small change and let's commit it and let's see how that works. So, hey, there is a spelling mistake. I'm going to fix that and I'm going to commit that to the repository. Okay. So using Git, if you have used Git before, you have to add the files and then commit the files and then push it to the repository. So let's do that now. Where am I? So I'm going to go to my project folder. And let's do Git status. So I have index HTML change. So then I'm going to do git add the current folder. Now let's do git status. So it added the index HTML. So I'm going to commit that change with a message fixed spelling error. Okay. And now I'm going to push that change to my source control repository. So I'm going to do git push. So here it's pushing that code to the repository. So now let's go back to Code Catalyst and go back to our source repository. And let's go to commits. So there's my commit. And if you click on that, you can see what change I made. So right there. And now let's go to our CI/CD workflow. And if you go to the workflow here, and I'm going to go to my pipeline. And if you look at runs, it started after my code got committed, it started a new build. So I'm going to go look at our initial build. This is still running, so it will take a while to build. So right now it's on. Oh, it's still deploying the backend. So it's going to take a while since we are short on time. I have already built a project, so I'm going to go show that to you. So let's go back to my space here. And I have built the same project here, so I'm going to show that. So I'm going to go. And I'm going to go to the run. So here it had built that. So at the end, it will give you the URL where it deployed. And you can click on that and go to your app. Go to the project which is deployed. So here, it's deployed and it's. So there is my first project. It's deployed. and this is the front end. And you can, I mean, this is just a shell it created, so you can make the front changes to however it fits what you need to build. So that's a little bit. Oh, I want to show you one more feature, which is creating issues. Let's go back to our project here. So as I mentioned, you can invite your teammates to the space so you guys can collaborate. So there is a project management part which you can do here too. So you can create issues, you can assign it to whoever is going to work on that feature. Let's create an issue. I'm going to say add another misfit. And it's in to do, and it's a medium priority, and I'm going to create the issue. So now let's say you can assign it to whoever is going to work on it. So add an assignee. So right now I'm the only one in the space, so I'm going to assign it to myself. And when I start working on this, I can move it to in progress. And when I'm done with that feature, so I can move it to in review. And when the review is done, it can be moved to done. So that's how you manage the work. And yeah, here there is a, once this loads, you can add members here. It's pretty easy. AWS code services, the code catalyst, where you have everything in one service. But if you want to use individually, so you can log into your AWS console and the search. Let's say I want to see code commit. So go to code commit. So here, when you go to one of the code services, you have all the code services listed here: code commit, code artifact, code build, code deploy, code pipeline. And here you have to set up individually each. If you want to create a repository, go to code commit, create a repository, and you can set up the build process under code build, the deploy process under code deploy, and pipeline is where you orchestrate all of that by creating a pipeline. So I will show you, I already have a pipeline created. So every time, like if there's a commit to the code commit repository, you can set up a pipeline. So this is the pipeline I already have. So it builds the code and then it deploys the code. So since we are running out of time, so yeah, you can deep dive on this, but I want to just show you like where all the services are. Thank you all. That's all I have for you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That was incredibly informative and engaging lecture. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.
Now that we have had the opportunity to hear this insightful lecture, we would like to gather your valuable feedback through a brief questionnaire. So we can move on to the questionnaire. You guys can comment down your doubts if you have any. Okay, so someone is asking about Cloud9.
Yes. What's the question?
Someone is asking that give more insights about Cloud9.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's see. So here, when you log into your AWS console, in your search, you search for Cloud9. That's how you go to Cloud9 and open the Cloud9 service. And it's big. There's different options. It's pretty easy. It walks you through the different steps, and you create the environment, and then in your browser, and you can start coding here, and it's integrated to your account, so you can commit the changes, all that. You can do it from here. Let me see if it's opened. Yeah, there. So this is the Cloud9 console, and you can create an environment. And and I have an environment created here, so you can just open that environment and then start coding. Hope
Okay. Any more doubts?
this is taking time. We did code catalyst. So this is your Cloud9 environment. So it will open this similar environment in the other window. So that's how you start using Cloud9. But you do need to have an AWS account to start using it. Or you can use the Code Catalyst free tier, and it comes with the development environments. Are there any other questions?
Uh, Someone is asking how can we use code whisperers?
Yes. Let's. So we have integration with different popular IDEs, and I'm going to. Can we share link in the chat?
Yes, we can share the link.
Let I'm going to add it in there. So this one shows how to set up Code Whisperer for Visual Studio Code, and you have right here like how to set up for Cloud9, how to set up for Lambda. There are different for different IDs, and you can just Google how to set up Code Whisperer, and just follow the steps, set it up, and it's as I showed you, it's so very easy to use. So once it's set up, at the bottom you see in your IDE Cloud Whisperer, and then start using it. Like just add a comment and hit enter, it will automatically suggest you code suggestions. So that's how you can get started. And we have extensive documentation in the AWS documentation, and you can go refer to the documentation if you have any doubts.
What is the difference between X-ray and CloudWatch for monitoring?
Yes, they are two of our like monitoring services. I give me a minute here. So CloudWatch is like for monitoring your applications, and CloudWatch, like you can send your logs to CloudWatch, and you can see your EC2 like different metrics, is CPU, like memory usage, all that you can watch in CloudWatch. And CloudWatch has like dashboards, and so yeah, it collects monitoring and operational data in the form of logs, metrics, events from your workloads running in AWS. And it is pretty integrated with the CI/CD tools too. And X-ray, like you can gather insights into how your application and its underlying services are performing, and discover root causes and identify performance bottlenecks. And so X-ray, like you have like when a request comes in, you have an end-to-end view of that request, like from starting from the request as it travels through your code or application, and you can see the whole map of it, and it shows where is the performance bottlenecks, or if there are any challenges, the X-ray shows that. And you can use X-ray to analyze application in development and in production. So that's a little bit of X-ray, but and you can go to AWS console or on our AWS documentation. You can find more information on those.
The very next question we have is we need VS Code or AWS account for it.
For you can, as I mentioned, you need an AWS account to use our code services, or if you want to deploy your application, and if you want to use Cloud9. And VS Code is a open source free IDE, so you can download VS Code and you can use VS Code. We have AWS SDK, or not SDK, AWS Toolkit. So you can install AWS Toolkit plugin or extension in VS Code, and you can start using VS Code too. So whatever is comfortable. So we have support for most popular IDEs, like many of them, and you can use whatever IDE you are comfortable with. And yeah, we have plugins for most of them.
So there are no more doubts. It seems like it's clear to everyone now.
Yeah.
This marks the end of today's session. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Amrita and to all of you for making this session a success. We truly appreciate your time and commitment. Now I'm sharing a QR code for the feedback form. Please take a moment to scan the QR code and receive your certificates.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess everyone has done it. So we look forward to seeing you in our future sessions. Stay tuned for more exciting sessions. Thank you.